engage in colloquy with my colleague from Arizona, Senator KYL.
Without objection.
Mr. President, as is well known by my colleagues and most Americans, that over the weekend, over the last several days, the governor of Arizona signed legislation which is controversial, which is designed to affect the issue of illegal immigrants into the country across the Arizona border. That legislation was enacted by the Arizona legislature and signed by the governor because of the frustration that the governor and the legislature, and indeed the majority of my constituents, have incredible frustration over the federal government's failure to carry out its responsibility to secure our border. And many have viewed this as a civil rights issue. There's no intention whatsoever to violate anyone's civil rights, but this is a national security issue. This is a national security issue where the United States of America has an unsecured border between Arizona and Mexico, which has led to violence, the worst I have ever seen, and numbers that stagger those who are unfamiliar with the issue. Numbers such as 241,000 illegal immigrants were apprehended on the Tucson sector border of Arizona just in the last year. You do the math where 3 to 5 times those numbers actually cross. We're talking about 1 million people crossing our border illegally. This is not just a human smuggling issue. This is a drug issue. Our borders are unsecured, and the flow of drugs is staggering across our border. Last year in the Tucson sector alone, there were over 1.3 million pounds of marijuana that were apprehended. 1.3 million pounds of marijuana apprehended on the Arizona border. The numbers of methamphetamine, cocaine, other drugs crossing our border by the drug cartels is staggering, as I said. The Los Angeles Times reported last week that over 22,000 Mexican citizens have been killed in the drug wars against the cartels. Have no doubt, this is an existential struggle between the government of Mexico, the drug cartels, the human smugglers who work together, and the security of the United States of America. The violence has already spilled across our borders, and unless we get it under control, it will get worse. 3 American citizens were murdered in Juarez, Mexico, as they were trying to find their way home. A rancher in southern Arizona was murdered as he was out patrolling his own property. The people in southern Arizona have had their rights violated by the unending and constant flow of drug smugglers and human traffickers across their property. Their homes are being broken into. Their rights are being violated. Their rights as American citizens to live in a safe and secure environment, as most of the pundits who are criticizing this legislation enjoy. The fact is that our borders are broken. They are not secure. It is a federal responsibility to secure our borders. It is not being done. Senator KYL and I have a 10-point plan that can be enacted immediately in order for us to secure our borders and secure it quickly. And before I ask my colleague to comment, there is the question about whether we can secure our borders or not. Of course we can. Of course we can. We have seen in the Yuma sector of Arizona a dramatic decrease in illegal crossing and drug smuggling. But again, I want to mention to my friend from Arizona, have no doubt that this is not just a human smuggling problem and people trying to cross our border illegally to find work. This is a human smuggling cartel aligned with the drug cartels that are sending drugs across our border and killing our citizens. And the cartels and the human smugglers are a direct threat to the security of this nation. Just 2 weeks ago, a highly organized syndicate that takes people who are coming across our border illegally to Tucson, putting them in vans, taking them to Phoenix, Arizona, and distributing them all over the country. These individuals come as far away as China. Have no doubt of the extent of the problem, the organization, the cruelty, the barbarity of the challenge we face of the drug cartels and the human smugglers that are just south of our border. And the state of Arizona has been bearing the brunt of it, and the administration has failed to act. We need 33,000 Border Patrol agents down on the border. We need the National Guard of 3,000 troops. We need to take a number of other steps that Senator KYL and I will describe. But this situation is the worst I have ever seen, and it's time for the federal government to act. If you don't like the bill, the legislation that the legislature passed and the governor signed in Arizona, then carry out the federal responsibilities, which are to secure the border. You probably wouldn't have had this problem.
Mr. President.
Senator from Arizona.
Mr. President, may I just ask my colleague, Senator McCain, you've been down on the border fairly recently, and I think that you went to the Tucson sector, which is the sector that has about half of all of the illegal immigration in the entire United States coming across in that one sector. Is that correct?
I have. And I would point out again to my friend, if it was 241,000 last year that were apprehended, there are estimates that as many as 5 to 1 are not apprehended. So that could have been over 1 million people who crossed the Arizona border illegally in 1 year. That's staggering in itself.
And, Mr. President, the point here is the Tucson sector is one of 2 sectors in Arizona. It's maybe, I'll just estimate here, maybe 60% of our southern border. The Yuma sector, maybe the other 40%. The Tucson sector ends, I believe, at the New Mexico border. So you're talking about a couple of 100 miles, give or take. Not that much area when you consider the entire more than 2,000-mile border all the way from the Gulf of Mexico to the San Diego area. So about 1/10 of the entire border area accounts for over half of all the illegal immigration. And my colleague, Senator McCain, was there within the last month or so. I was down in the Yuma sector, and the reason I mention these 2 sectors is that it is literally the tail of 2 approaches to immigration reform. And as Senator McCain said, there is absolutely no doubt that application of the right principles and resources to the border can secure the border. Let me give my experience in the Yuma sector and then ask my colleague to talk a little bit more about the Tucson sector, because those are the 2 sectors in Arizona. The Yuma sector has virtually eliminated illegal immigration. Now, there is still substantial drug smuggling, and that's a lot of what they're focused on right now. How could this have happened? Mainly 3 things. First of all, they completed the fencing in that particular area. I think there's just a couple of miles left to go. But they've got 11 miles of very good new double fencing in the urban area around Yuma, and then vehicle barriers beyond that. There's some area where it's even triple fenced. They have enough Border Patrol agents right now, though we have to be careful we don't take some from the Yuma sector to send over to the Tucson sector where they need more, because it's a little bit like these wars abroad. Once you take the area, you need to have enough troops to hold the area, or when you leave, the bad guys just come back in. So we need the Border Patrol there. And if we could add some National Guard troops, as my colleague Senator McCain has recommended, it would absolutely be the final personnel solution here. I can remember when the Guard was withdrawn and there was only 1 guardsman left in the Yuma sector, and they still stayed away from him. I'm not even sure if he had his weapon with him, but they don't like, I mean, let's just put it this way. The bad guys on the other side of the border, whether it's the cartels or others, do not want to mess with the United States military, and they won't. And that's the reason my colleague Senator McCain, why then Governor Napolitano and many others believe that we need more National Guard in the border. And what was the third thing that brought the illegal immigration in the Yuma sector almost to an end? It's called Operation Streamline. It's very simple. When you cross the border, you get thrown in jail. The first time, it's for about 2 weeks. Second time, 30 days. After that, it could be 60 days. Now, the sheriffs tell us that about 17% of the people that they apprehend are criminals in the United States or are wanted for crimes here. Obviously, that 17% you want to catch and you want to put them in jail. The rest of them want to come here for work. Well, they can't work and make money while they're in jail. So that's a huge disincentive for them to cross in that area. So what the Border Patrol and the Department of Justice did was to say, fine, if you cross in this area, you go to jail. Well, they stopped crossing in that area. And they gradually expanded those areas until it finally covered the entire Yuma sector. Now, illegal immigrant coyotes and cartel folks know that if they try to bring somebody across in the Yuma sector, immediately those people are going to jail. And then they'll be going back home. So they don't try it anymore. As a result, the statistics are, as my colleague Senator McCain just pointed, in the Tucson sector, you've got almost 250,000 people last year apprehended. Who knows how many more were not apprehended? How many in the Tucson sector? Well, this year, 4,946 so far. From 250,000 almost to 4,000 plus. And it wasn't always so in the Yuma sector in 2006, 118,000 apprehended. The next year it went down to 37,000. You could see a big impact, and then 8,000, 7,000, probably 5,000 this year. You can see that the impact of the fencing, the personnel, and Operation Streamline have made a huge difference. Mr. President,
Unanimous consent with the indulgence of my friend from Hawaii for 3 additional minutes.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. President, I've made my point here. Senator McCain is absolutely right. If you want to do it, you can do it. You just have to apply the will and the resources. What worked in Yuma sector could work in the Tucson sector. And that's why, and almost all of those things are included in the 10-point proposal that Senator McCain and I have made.
But I also emphasize the violence is worse than it's ever been. 22,000 Mexicans have been murdered on the Mexican border. American citizens have been murdered on our border. This is no longer a situation where someone from Mexico or some other country decides they want to cross our borders. These are highly organized, highly sophisticated, well-equipped, well-trained, armed cartels that drugs and human smuggling cartels coordinate with each other through these corridors. They have better communication than our enforcement agencies do due to our lack of interoperability. They have sophisticated equipment. They're even sending drugs over using ultralights. This is a struggle for the existence of the government of Mexico, and this is a struggle on our side of the border for the fundamental obligation that any government has, and that is to provide its citizens with secure borders. Right now, our citizens are not safe. And therefore, the federal government should be fulfilling its responsibilities to provide the necessary equipment and manpower to secure our borders. As my colleague from Arizona just pointed out, it can be achieved. It is now a massive failure on the part of the federal government, and they should also fund it. I thank my friend from Arizona, and I thank my colleague from Hawaii for his indulgence.
Mr. President,